friend beside me. Nikan yawned as he left his house, coat tightly wrapped around him and a bag over his shoulder. He had plans to observe one of the healers that specialized in alchemy today, though he was beginning to question his decision when he realized how cold it was this morning. Did he really want to go sit in an underground alchemy lab? They probably had heat of some sort, he imagined, whether it by fire, magic, or more modern ways. No matter. He was really curious on what alchemy the healer was using. The scholar let out a content sigh, which turned into a hum as he pulled his traptor beanie down over his currently silver and white hair. The blue beanie hid almost all of his hair as he pulled it as far as it would go onto his head, then smiled to himself as he finally walked forward, away from his manor. As he walked, he pulled a headphone from his coat pocket and put one of the earbuds in his ear, a small smile forming as his eyes brightened. Music soon filled his mind and mostly blocked out the sharp sound of snow crunching under his feet. "Good morning, Nikan," one person that Nicky passed said warmly, waving despite their load of cloth. "Good morning, Master Taelen," he said as he bowed his head slightly to the man. The fabric weaver beamed at the kindness and kept on walking in the opposite direction. Nikan's currently blue gaze shifted to look ahead of him, and he smiled as he approached a person that he, to be honest, was less than excited to run into. The man was not from Fayley, and was only on the island to investigate the demon problem, as were many other demon and beast hunters. The human man was still young, only in his early 30s, with dark black hair and equally dark eyes. His skin was lightly tanned and riddled with scars from his adventures. He was quite an interesting person, and Nikan really had no problems with him, but the constant nagging from the demon hunter was a bit redundant. "Good morning, Mr. Jackson." Nikan greeted the demon hunter with a polite smile, which faded pretty quickly back to an emotionless expression. The demon hunter's eyes narrowed as he watched Nicky. "At it again, demon." Nikan glanced at the man as he walked by, his head cocking slightly. "I do not know what it is, but I suppose in your eyes, yes, I am." His voice was smooth as he focused his attention back on his music and the road ahead of him. It would do nothing to speak to the demon hunter anymore, who was convinced he had something to do with the infestation. Nicky had to give him credit for figuring out that he had demon influence in his blood, but, well, the man was too hot-headed and ignorant to know any more than that. His blind hatred for demons was making him focus on Nicky, not the real issue he had come to fix. Nikan let out a soft sigh as the demon hunter reappeared in the periphery of his vision. "What can I help you with, Master Jackson?" he finally said, his eyes shifting to look at the man. The man took a few larger strides and cut Nicky off, making him stop in his tracks as his head rolled to be cocked sideways. "Where are you off to, bastard?" The demon hunter hissed sharply as a snarl formed on his face and his dark eyes burned. Nikan's nose twitched as he inspected the man, wondering why he acted this way. Of course, he really wanted to know. He would just peer into his mind. But no, he was not worth that much effort. "I am off to learn about the alchemy of one of our healers. It is most interesting and different than the most common alchemy styles." His voice was soft and warm, despite his lack of interest in the man. "Don't treat me like I'm stupid, bastard," the hunter hissed as he stood taller, challenging Nicky. Nikan blinked a few times, a bit confused. "No, you are quite smart, with an intelligence level higher than most people. But you do lack wisdom and common sense. I do not know what you would call that." He pursed his lips as he thought, and his brows furrowed slightly. The hunter's mouth hung open slightly, but soon shifted into a snarl as he grabbed the front of Nicky's coat and pushed him back until he was pushed against a tree. Nicky's brows raised slightly, surprised, but he made no other reaction to the man. "I should just kill you now," the man snarled as he leaned into Nicky, shoving his arm harder into Nicky's collarbones. Still, no reaction flashed across Nicky's face. He knew that Jackson would grow bored or tired of this performance. He just had to be patient and let him burn his energy. "Give me a reason not to. I want to hear you beg for your life," Jackson snarled, his face shifting just inches from Nicky's. Nikan's eyes blinked slowly as he let out an unenthusiastic sigh. "Oh no, please, don't harm me. What will my lover think if I don't come home tonight?" Nikan's voice was sarcastic and bored sounding as he spoke, letting his eyes wander around the area. The hunter's face fell slightly as he started to pick up on Nikan's less than exciting behavior. "You son of a bitch!" The hunter snarled as he lifted Nikan a bit higher, pulling the scholar an inch off the ground. "Ooh," Nikan said in a slight surprise as an amused smirk crossed over his face. The hunter pulled a slightly curved blade from his pocket and let its cool metal push against Nikan's neck, just under his jawline. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Easy there, killer!" The voice was slightly familiar to Nikan, but caught the hunter off guard, making him turn his head and lower his blade. "Can't have you just running around killing people!" The man approaching pushed his dusty brown hair from his face, and his lupine ears perked forward. What was his name again? Nikan couldn't remember, but he did remember meeting him at Alicia's house almost 2 weeks prior. "Stay out of this!" the hunter snarled as he turned back to Nikan. Nikan snorted to himself, and the hunter's eyes narrowed. No, I don't think I will." The Vargan man approached more and put an arm between the hunter and Nikan, attempting to push the hunter back. The man released Nikan suddenly and wheeled on the Vargan man. Nikan's feet hit the ground and he stumbled slightly, only to have the Vargan put a hand to his chest, keeping him from going forward. "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Jackson snarled as he stood tall again, challenging the wolf man. The Vargan's nose wiggled as he smiled ever so slightly. "I am Taelen. Not much more you need to know, my friend." He spoke smoothly, with a slight snarling tone to his voice. Jackson snarled, his eyes narrowing again, and he pointed his curved blade at Taelen. "You could be killed for aiding a demon," he growled, making Taelen glance at Nikan, then back with a more amused smile. "Right. I don't know what you are talking about, so..." He inhaled deeply, clearly just about as amused with this man as Nikan. "Why don't you just move along? Go off and play with your toys, child." Taelen's voice went dark as he bared his teeth and leaned closer to Jackson. The hunter looked at him, appalled. Why was this Taelen egging the aggressive hunter on? Nicky didn't understand it. Why would anyone get involved in a situation like this? Taelen stepped back a bit, a smile forming again on his face as the tip of his tail twitched back and forth. Jackson lunged forward with the curved blade, slashing at the Vargan's chest, only to have his arm grabbed quickly. Taelen twisted the man's arm as he pulled him close, bending his arm behind his back. He wrapped his forearm around Jackson's neck as he tightened his grip on his wrist, making the man drop the blade. Nikan's eyes widened slightly as he watched the Vargan, surprised by the lack of change in the man's demeanor. Jackson let out a grunt as pain shot through his arm, and he leaned back, trying to lessen the tension. "Now, are you done?" Taelen sighed heavily as he leaned his head to Jackson's ear. Jackson let out a stubborn snarl as he tried to pull himself from Taelen's grip. No. Are you done?" Taelen's voice escalated to a loud growl as his brows furrowed and his teeth flashed. Jackson let out a huff, but nodded once. Taelen nodded back, his face dark and aggravated looking as he released the hunter and shoved him forward. "Get out of here, you useless bastard," Tay snapped, making Jackson glance over at him, back over his shoulder. The hunter waited for a moment, but soon wheeled around as he pulled another blade from his pocket. Taelen let out a heavy sigh as his eyes rolled. A split second later, Taelen's form had morphed into his wolf form, and he bared his teeth to the hunter. Jackson jolted back in surprise as he looked Tay over. "I said, get out of here!" Taelen's voice was deep and aggressive as he stepped closer to the hunter, his teeth snapping loudly. Jackson backed up slowly, the expression on his face changing as he attempted to look like he was losing interest. "I don't have time for this," Jackson said with a huff as he turned slowly and started to walk away. Wolf Taelen's face relaxed, and soon his tail was swaying side to side. He soon shifted back and stretched his arms into the air, a large smile forming on his face. "Miss Alicia was telling us about the demon hunters on this island." Taelen turned to Nikan. "But I didn't realize they were so insane, idiotic, useless." He scratched his neck as he laughed slightly. Nikan blinked a few times as he looked Taelen over. "You all right?" Taelen finally asked, trying to change the subject a bit. "Yes, I'm fine," Nikan said simply as he cocked his head. "Nikan, right? You were with Master Mitz and Dason." Taelen smiled broadly, making Nikan start to grin. "Yes, I do not believe we properly met yet." Nikan held his hand out to Taelen. Tay took his hand and shook it strongly. "I do not understand why you got involved, but thank you for your concern," Nikan said as warmly as he could. Taelen smiled and shrugged. "It's what I do, I guess. I was trained to protect, just like Master Trinsko," Taelen said as he stood tall and beamed. "Ah, a Skalat. I have heard a lot about the job from Alicia and Trin," Nikan said with a slightly interested nod. The two men fell silent for a moment, but then Taelen shifted his attention back to Nikan. "Shall I accompany you to your destination? Chances are he'll be waiting for another chance to try to pick a fight with you." Nikan looked at Taelen, but nodded. He was right. Jackson had been trying to get him more and more lately. I think I would appreciate the company, Sir Taelen." Nikan smiled broadly at Tay, who raised his hand and shook it slightly. No, none of that sir crap. Taelen, Tay, Tay, Sunshine, those are acceptable. None of the official crap names. Nikan laughed slightly, amused by how Taelen seemed to be getting more and more energetic, more friendly as he spoke. "Sounds acceptable," Nikan said with a larger smile and started to walk forward. Taelen was quick to follow his new companion onward. "Good afternoon, Nikan." Taelen's voice was as perky as always as the Vargan wandered into the library, interrupting Nikan's research. For the last 3 days, Taelen had accompanied Nikan many places, standing guard against the irritating demon hunter and giving Nikan company with Dason being gone. Nikki had to be honest, he did like the Vargan. He was friendly, accepting and understanding, and while he wasn't entirely smart, he was willing to learn and ask questions. A good student and companion. "You are here early," Nikan said, his currently blue eyes raised up to look at the clock and pushed his currently pink hair from his face. "I was bored. Luna's asleep, Balin and Moki went to the market. Who knows where my brother is?" The Vargan pulled a chair around and sat in it backwards, leaning over the back to glance at what Nikki was reading. Nikan watched him for a moment, but after fixing his glasses, leaned forward to continue reading. There were many moments of silence before Taelen ruined it again. "Nikan?" he asked, his voice happy, but holding a tinge of curiosity. The scholar raised his gaze to look at his new companion. "If you are a mage," Tay sat up in his chair and his brows furrowed, "why don't you just fix your eyes so you don't need glasses?" Nikan went still as he glared at Taelen. His eyes narrowed and his nose flared. Taelen leaned back in his chair, suddenly a bit uncertain if he had asked a forbidden question. Why? Why do the stupid ones always ask that question? Nikan growled as he flipped his book closed and leaned back in his chair. Taelen watched him with widened eyes. I'm sorry, He glanced around, now a bit curious if Nikan was going to yell at him. Robert asked me that question just a few weeks ago, he said as he furrowed his brows, his voice soft and hissing. Taelen stayed quiet, hoping for an explanation. Nikan fell silent for a moment as he took a few breaths, but then looked back at Taelen, his face calming significantly. I did adjust my eyes. I do not need my glasses until I'm reading. I did not make enough adjustments to be able to read carefully and clearly. But I also rather like my glasses, so I wear them when I do not need to. Nikan's face relaxed, his eyes brightened again. Taelen forced a small smile. Oh, all right then. Tay said softly as he leaned back over the back of his chair and put his hands on the table where he sat. Am I really stupid? Taelen's face scrunched up as he smiled and looked back over at Nikan. Nikan's face was blank for a moment, but he soon smiled, wrinkling his nose as he laughed softly. Just a little, he teased as he stood up and returned the book he had been reading to the shelf. Taelen stood up from his chair, large grin over his face as he stretched. You know what they say. Ignorance is bliss. Probably why I'm always so happy. The Vargan man beamed wildly as Nikan turned back to look at him, a bit surprised and taken aback by his comment. Nikan's expression only made Taelen smile more. Let's go get lunch, smarty pants, the Vargan said as he started to turn away. Nikan nodded as he grabbed his coat and slipped it over his arms. The two men chatted quietly as they left the library and headed from the city hall out into the cool winter world. Is Maximus coming home today? Taelen asked warmly as he turned to look at Nikan. Nikan's face brightened significantly. Yes, I plan on going home after lunch to wait for him. Would you like to come? I would like you to meet him. Taelen smiled as Nikan spoke. I have nothing else planned today, the Vargan said with a hum. You never have plans, Taelen, Nikan said softly, making Taelen laugh and shrug as he put his arm on his new friend's shoulders. Nikan was already growing used to the Vargan's close behavior. At first, the lack of personal space from Taelen was overwhelming, but now that he was gathering information on all the angles of the Vargan's personality, he was getting more and more comfortable with it. Taelen lived for closeness with those around him. He was in tune with his pack, and he used physical contact to better read every situation, and, if the need came to it, to stay in control of a situation. This was not a common behavior in humans, which was probably the reason Nikan struggled with it at first. Nikan was also starting to notice the safe, warm feeling from Taelen too. It was a strange feeling, and one he only really felt when he was with Dason or Mitz. The feeling he couldn't explain. Maybe that was just the friendship. He wiggled his nose as he thought, making Taelen glance at him. Quit thinking, he muttered in a teasing tone, making Nikki smile slightly and nod. Nikan sat on the couch, leaning over the coffee table, a stern look on his face. I do not see how winning a game show is considered a normal part of life, Nikan said as he looked at the little card he had just drawn from the pile. Taelen laughed as he spun the numbered wheel. I don't know, but it's just a game. Tay moved his little card game piece around and groaned, despite the smile on his face. What was it? Nikki asked, his attention shifting from his confusion to what was now taking place. I lose a turn, the Vargan sighed as he flopped backwards to lay on the carpeted floor. Nikan was about to spin the wheel of life when his phone started ringing. His face lit up as he picked it up and answered. Hello, Maximus. His voice was happy and almost perky. Hey, Nikki, I just got to Fayley. I'm just gonna shower real quick. You gonna be home? Jason's voice was tired sounding, but held a gentle tone of excitement. Yes, my new friend and I are playing a board game. I'm not going to leave anytime soon. New friend? I didn't think you made friends. Jason's voice was pleasant and teasing. Nikan could hear the soldier shifting through things on the other side of the phone. I am capable. Nikan laughed softly, picking up on the teasing that Jason was giving him. The two traded a few more playful words before hanging up, and Nikan seamlessly went back to playing the game he was playing with Taelen. The Vargan man was setting up again, watching Nikan with amused eyes. What? Nikan questioned as he moved his little card piece and glanced up at the Vargan, his own eyes meeting Taelen's marbled ones. You are very attached to Max, aren't you? His voice was airy and interested. Nikan could feel his cheeks warm slightly. Yes, I am, he said smoothly. He had told Taelen about being close to Jason, but the extent of their relationship had not been discussed yet. Are you partners? Taelen's voice softened as he tried his best to delicately ask his question. Yes, we have been since midsummer, Nikan responded with slight hesitation. Taelen smiled, but was silent. Does it bother you? Nikki asked once he realized that Taelen wasn't going to say anything else. Why would it? Taelen responded as he leaned up against the coffee table that their game board was on. I imagine Vargan, being an animalistic race, frown upon the unnatural bonding of those of the same sexes. He spoke, Taelen smiled and laughed. Nah, we are taught that you cannot pick who you fall for, that it is your spirit's choice, and ultimately, the goddess's choice. I think it is great that you have found somebody like that, Nikan. Most people with demon blood do not have that opportunity. Nikan froze up again, looked at Taelen, frowning, panic shooting through his chest. What? Nikan almost squeaked out. Taelen's face melted into concern. I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to know that, I'm guessing, Taelen said in a quiet tone. Nikan just stared at him, waiting, wanting an explanation. I can smell it on you, Nikan. I asked Miss Alicia about it, and she told me. He sat taller. Please, don't take my words in a bad way. I didn't mean anything by it. Taelen stood up and moved to the couch to sit next to his new friend. Nikan just looked him over, his emotions shifting from panic to confusion. You know, and you still stand between me and that demon hunter. Taelen put his arm around Nikki's shoulder, smiling. Of course. You have demon blood. That doesn't mean you are one. You have proved that to me and Miss Alicia. Nikan smiled and looked down at the ground. Thank you, Taelen. That means a lot. Nikan finally spoke again, nodding softly. Taelen smiled more, his calm and supporting air dissipating. The Vargan pet the back of Nikan's head, then moved back to his spot on the floor to continue their game. Nikan was quiet for a moment, taking in what Taelen had said. He couldn't help but smile, the feeling of acceptance and belonging sinking further into his chest. Why do I have to get married? Nikan asked as Taelen put another little person in his game car. Because most people, no matter the race, do get bonded at some point. In some way, Taelen said, laughing hysterically. Do you not want to marry Max someday? Tay asked, his cheeks red from laughing and his eyes damp. Nikan smiled at him, his heart enlightening. I do not see the point in marriage, but, if asked, I probably would do it, I suppose, Nikan explained as he crinkled his nose up. You don't see the point? Nikan shook his head as Taelen asked his question. No. If you have that strong of a bond with somebody, a title will not change how you act or feel. If they want to leave you, no title will stop them from hiding in the shadows with a lover. Nikan said, still smiling despite the dark words he was saying. No, but... Taelen thought for a moment, trying to find his words. Think of it as a promise, not only to your partner, but to the gods and everyone else, that you will love and protect and be there for them. The gods then don't have to worry about you as much because you have something that so many others don't. A partnership that will help you overcome almost any and all challenges you face. Nikan shrugged and nodded, hearing Taelen's words but not swaying. Maybe someday my views will change, Nikan said as he spun the game wheel. I almost bonded once. Her name was Irti. Taelen started, making Nikan raise his gaze back to him. She didn't want me anymore, but that's all right. Taelen's nose wrinkled. I will find somebody better. Nikan smiled at his glowing optimism. And will you marry? Taelen nodded confidently. No matter who it is, male, female, human or Vargan, I want them to know how special they are. And it will be all about them, about us. He beamed almost childishly, making Nikan laugh softly. I hope to be invited to see that day. Nikan laughed as he tried to focus back on the game. Ha! You kidding? You will probably be part of the ceremony. I will need a friend's encouragement to keep calm. The Vargan flopped back onto his back, laughing. Nikan covered his mouth as he tried to contain his own rare laughter. You? Calm? I don't think I could help with that, especially on your wedding day. Taelen let out a howl of laughter, and all Nikki could see of the Vargan on the other side of the table was a flailing arm as his laugh echoed through the room. From the other room, Nikan heard the front door opening and stood. Taelen continued to laugh as he moved into the foyer, his eyes meeting the tired, smiling face of Dason. Sounds like fun in here, Dason said warmly. I want to be your best man! Taelen howled through his laughter, making Nikan sigh as he approached Dason, grinning. Dason frowned and leaned into the side, looking towards the living room. Taelen, one of the Vargan that we met at Miss Alicia's, Nikan explained, earning a small, uncertain nod from Dason. Nikan was quick to push the subject away and wrapped his arm around Dason's chest, making the smaller man's face soften to an admiring smile. Dason pulled Nikan closer, causing Nikki to lean his head down slightly so that their foreheads were pushed together. Nikan slid one of his arms up Dason's chest, up to his neck, and lightly pet the man's exposed skin, causing him to smile. I missed you, Dason crooned softly, making Nikki's cheeks warm up. I missed you as well, the scholar admitted, just before he felt his partner's lips on his own. Nikan finally pulled away from Dason, smiling with rosy cheeks as the shorter man observed him. What? Nikan asked, grinning more, his eyes crinkling. Dason let out a dreamy sigh as his crooked smile pulled at his lips more. How do you look better every time I see you? Nikan instantly felt his cheeks warming as color rushed into them. He felt his eyes widen in surprise as he nervously smiled. Dason's own smile widened as Nikan nervously lowered his gaze, letting his shy grin grow. No, I just changed my hair. Nothing else. You are just getting tired. His fingers fiddled with his bracelet as he tried to regain his collected composure. Dason stepped forward and grabbed Nikki's hands, stopping the nervous fidgeting. You just can't get used to compliments, Dason said warmly, making Nikan laugh almost silently. Come on, I want you to meet my new friend. Nikan's voice was soft and still nervous as he tried to change the subject off of himself. Dason chuckled softly but nodded as he released Nikki's hand. Nikan took a few steps back, then turned and wandered back into the living room. Taelen sat up from where he was laying on the floor, smiling like he had overheard some super-secret conversation. Nikan's nose wrinkled as he glared at Taelen's sly and amused expression. Maximus, this is Taelen. Nikan motioned to Taelen as he sat down. Taelen stood up and offered his hand to Dason, smiling broadly. I know we have met in passing, but it's an honor to finally meet you. Officially, Maximus. Dason shook Taelen's hand firmly, but his brows furrowed slightly. Taelen lowered his gaze from Dason as his ears flicked back slightly. The motions did not go unnoticed, and Nikan lightly grabbed Dason's arm. You are uncertain of him. Why? He asked mentally, watching as Dason sat down next to him. He watched Nikan from the corner of his eye as his mental voice filled his mind. Nikan poked and prodded as Dason's mind, feeling uncertainty, the jealousy, the distrust. Nikan's grip on Dason's arm tightened, and as he poured his own thoughts and the images of meeting Taelen into Dason's mind. That is how people get to others, Nikan. What if he has interest in the demon infestation? Dason's eyes narrowed as he turned to look into Nikan's face. As they mentally conversed, Nikan leaned forward to continue the game of life that he and Taelen were playing. He is a companion of Alicia. His mind is pure. He was, a Skalat like Trinsko. Great. We need another Tren on the island. Dason's mental voice was sharp. Another image flashed into Nikki's mind as Dason lost focus of his own barrier. Nikan turned his attention to Dason, surprised by the mental image he saw. He was about to say something when Taelen stood up and stretched. I am sure that you are tired, Master Max, and wish to spend time with your partner. He lowered himself into a bow, causing his dusty brown hair to flop forward. So, I will take my leave. I promised to take Loon to the cafe for dinner, after all. The Vargan beamed as he stood tall. It was nice to meet you, Taelen. Dason's voice was soft and convincing, but Nikan knew that Taelen could see the sharp look in Dason's brown eyes. Despite the look, Taelen said his pleasantries and left. Maximus. Nikan turned to look at Dason once he knew Taelen had gone. Dason lifted his brow and looked at Nikan. You are worried that I will lose interest in you? The scholar asked, his own brows furrowing deeply as his heart seemed to sink. Guilt? Why would he feel guilt? It took him a moment to place the unusual emotion. He was guilty feeling for making Dason worry, for making him feel like he was less than what he really was. I did not mean to make you feel that way, Maximus. Nikan's voice was soft, as he turned so that he was sitting facing his partner. I just wanted you to see that I made a friend. I hoped it would make you happy as it did me. He moved his hand from Dason's arm and rested it on the soldier's thigh. His eyes were low as he tried to find the best words to use. Dason's hand slowly moved to rest on top of Nikki's, and he lightly rubbed the man's long fingers. I'm sorry, Nikki. I didn't mean to act like that. The soldier's hand raised, and he lifted Nikan's chin so their eyes met. I am very happy that you made a friend. You deserve a freaking fan club. Nikan smiled and leaned his head into Dason's hand as he watched the soldier's face. I just am greedy. I don't want to lose you. Dason's voice was soft and loving as he ran his thumb over Nikan's cheek. You will not lose me, Maximus. I am happy with you. Dason smiled as he leaned forward and kissed Nikan's forehead, making the younger man's nose wrinkle and eyes close. If you are happy with your new friend, I will try my best to see what you see. Dason was warm as he stood up. Nikan watched him, his eyes bright, as Dason seemed to relax. Now, go get ready. I want food and a drink. Dason grabbed his partner's arm and pulled him to his feet as Nikan laughed. Nikan giggled wildly as they left the crossroads. I think I let you have too many, Nikki. Dason giggled out as he wrapped his arm around Nikan's waist. Nikan laughed more as he leaned into his partner, his cheeks rosier than normal. The two walked lazily, giggling and swerving slightly as they moved further from the bar and restaurant and towards the direction of the Zaleski mansion. Maximus. Nikan giggled as he spoke and pulled away from Dason and towards the park they were passing. Dason hesitated, a sheepish smile forming on his face. "Nikki, what are you doing?" He took a step, pushing through the snow as Nikan turned away and with a spring in his step, walked to the park and sat on a snow-covered swing, a large, childish grin forming on his face. Dason laughed, rubbed his face as he pushed through the snow, trying his best to keep in Nikki's tracks. "Push me, Maximus!" Nikan laughed loudly as he watched Dason fight through the snow to get to him. "If I could reach you, I would!" Dason laughed as he stumbled, almost falling into the knee-deep snowdrift. Nikan laughed and started to swing back and forth, watching Dason struggle when he was hit. His smile faded for a moment as he ran his hand through the back of his hair, pulling out snow chunks. The scholar's gaze shifted upwards, confused. Thump! This time, he was hit in the back, and he slowly turned. From behind a bush, Taelen bounced out, a pack of snow in his hands as he rolled it into a snowball. Behind Taelen, one of the other Vargans Nikki slightly remembered, Lunson, stepped out, snowballs gripped in his arms and his cheeks red from the cold. "You're out late," Tay said as he eyed the newest snowball. Nikan giggled as he leaned forward in his swing to gather up snow. "And I smell booze. Ha ha, a little tipsy, are we?" Taelen teased as he grabbed a couple snowballs for Loon. Loon beamed happily, giggling silently. Dason laughed as he finally reached Nikan, panting slightly. "Just, enough to keep us warm," Dason said as he smiled and leaned on Nikki. Taelen nodded once, his nose wrinkling in amusement. "I want Max on my team," Taelen said as he moved away from Loon. Loon glanced at him, seemingly offended, while Dason looked at him surprised. "You in, soldier?" Taelen asked, holding a snowball out. Dason let out an excited laugh as he trudged through the snow to take the snowball. Nikan stood from the swing, his hands packing a snowball as excited panic started to cross his face. "Give us a few seconds to get a base," Lunson barked as he turned back to the bush where he and Tay had been hiding. Nikan was quick to follow him as Tay and Dason found another barrier to use as cover. It did not take long for the four men to get into a full snowball war. It did not take long for the tide of the war to be favoring Taelen and Dason. Loon and Nikki hid behind the barrier bush, laughing as they frantically tried to decide what to do. "I have an idea, but it's extreme." Loon turned to Nikan dramatically, grabbing the lanky man's hand. Nikan was slightly startled, but started laughing at Loon's dramatic facial expressions. "I will take down Tay-Tay," the dark-haired Vargan said as he almost passionately squeezed Nikan's hand and started to rise to his feet. Nikan snorted as he tried to hold back a laugh. "Taelen will get you. They both probably will," he said as smoothly as he could as Loon prepared himself to run out of their hiding place. "Remember me," Loon said in a deep, brooding whisper. Loon sprang from behind their shielding bush, and Nikan peered over to watch the drama unfold. Loon jumped from the bushes, sending a snowball flying past Dason's head. The soldier dropped into the snow, laughing hysterically, leaving Taelen undefended as he packed more snowballs. The dark-haired Vargan made running through the snow look easy as he charged at Taelen, then tackled his companion. Taelen yelped as he was knocked over, but was soon laughing as Loon lay sprawled out on his chest, giggling. Nikan soon stood up, snickering as he walked out from behind the bush and to the distracted Dason. Casually, Nikan lightly tapped behind one of Dason's knees, making it give, and lightly shoved him sideways, making the soldier topple into the snow. Dason quickly rolled onto his back, the look of surprise and shock on his face as Nikan smiled down at him. "You taught me that, Maximus," the scholar beamed. "And I do believe the student defeated the teacher. This time, at least." His smile turned to proud, almost cocky grin as he stepped over his fallen partner and turned to help him back to his feet. "Come on, Loon, my back is getting cold." Taelen laughed as he tried to push Loon off of him, only to have his smaller companion grip his shirt tightly. "Are they?" Dason smiled as he stood and brushed snow off of himself. Nikan looked at Dason, then turned to look at Tay and Loon. "I do not believe so, but I could be wrong," Nikan said as he shrugged. "Is that something I could ask, or is it rude to ask?" Nikan questioned as Dason reached up and put his cold hands on Nikan's neck. Nikan's face scrunched up as he tried to wiggle away from Dason, only to stumble and almost fall. Dason laughed and mildly panicked as Nikki stumbled and was soon holding onto the man's arm, trying to give him balance. Nikan laughed for a moment as he made sure he was balanced in the snow before answering his own question. "I do not know if it would be or not, though I do not think Taelen would care. He is not easily offended." Nikan smiled lightly as he watched Dason. The soldier beamed and turned to face Taelen and Loon, who were both still on the ground. "Do we need to get you a room?" Dason said as he slowly walked over to them. Taelen instantly started laughing at Dason's comment, while Loon sat up, still on Tay's legs. "We have a room already," Loon said with a smile and bright eyes. Taelen let out a louder laugh that followed with a snort. "No, not that type of room, Loon." Taelen wiggled himself into a sitting position and put his hand on the back of Loon's neck, lightly squeezing it fondly. "And no, it's not like that." Taelen smiled up at Dason as the soldier crossed his arms on his chest. "Right." Dason nodded once, but left it at that. He wasn't going to push the matter. He understood keeping such things quiet, and he wasn't going to torment Nikan's new friend over it. "All right, it's too cold for this." Taelen growled as he finally wrapped his arms around Loon and, with gentle force, threw the dark-haired Vargan into the snow and off of his legs so that he could stand up. Loon let out a snort, followed by a growl, and the moment Taelen was up, he jumped at him. Taelen, of course, was expecting it, and was soon carrying Loon, princess style, while Loon grinned cheesily. Taelen grumbled under his breath as he started to walk back towards the road, attempting to get out of the snow. Nikan and Dason followed him, panting gently still, their hearts slowly starting to calm down again. "Well, that was fun," Taelen said as his feet finally reached the solid ground of the street, and Loon leaned against his chest, his face showing the exhaustion that was now taking over. "It was very fun," Dason admitted as he looked up at Nikki, who nodded in agreement. "Listen." Dason turned to face Taelen, making the Vargan's brows rise in surprise. "I'm sorry for how I acted earlier today. It was unnecessary and uncalled for." Talen's nose wrinkled and he shook his head. "You worry too much, Max. I understood where you come from, and I did not take anything to heart." He beamed and adjusted Loon in his arms, causing him to growl and softly put one arm up over Tay's shoulders. "Still, I feel better if I apologize. So, I'm sorry. I appreciate you helping Nikan. I feel better, leaving during the week knowing he has somebody else to watch his back." Talen's face softened as he listened to Dason. "I was a Skalat, Max. It is what I do best. It's kind of nice to be a Skalat again, especially to somebody that is just already such a good friend." Tay nodded to Nikki, making him smile slightly as he gently grabbed Dason's hand. Dason's fingers intertwined with Nikan's, causing him to stand a bit taller. "Dang, Vargan are so..." Dason stopped, trying to find the word he was looking for. "Loyal, accepting?" Nikan offered a few words, but Dason shook his head. "I don't know. I guess I'm just a dog person." He laughed, causing Taelen to snort and hold in a laugh. "Well, we better get back. Loon is getting heavier and heavier." Loon growled at the mentioning of his name, but buried his face more into Talen's chest. Nikan and Dason both nodded. Good night, Taelen, Lunson. Nikan waved one hand as Dason turned to lead them back to the Zaleski mansion. Good night, Nikan. Good night, Max. Taelen's voice echoed softly back to them.